So the format of this class is, I'll be speaking for 45 minutes, and after that we can have question answer session and discuss whatever you could not understand, or if you want to add something in there, because this is a pretty deep scripture actually, if you look at it. It's in the sutra forms. Sutras are always very concise. So there's a lot of meanings can be extracted from the sutras. So let's do the prayers first. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parbrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhu Bhavaswaha Tatsavitra Varenayam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Asto Ma Sadgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityorma Amritam Gamya. Om Sena Vavtu Sena Bhunaktu Saviryam Karvavahi Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvi Shavahi. Om Shanti 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 Om. Last week I told you in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras there are 196 sutras, aphorisms in English, that's how it's translated. And these sutras, they cover all aspects of our life, beginning with a prescribed code of conduct and ending with a person's vision of his true self. Atam Sakshatkar. Each word of the sutras is concise and precise. Each word contained in the sutras conveys a wealth of knowledge, wealth of thought and experience. And it's all very indispensable for a serious student. That's why we got to pay 100% attention to understand it. These sutras are like pearls in a necklace. So it's like a beautiful, precious necklace, and these are pearls. And each pearl is connected with the previous pearl. That's how we draw the wisdom from the sutras. Rishi Patanjali, who's the author of these sutras, he never said that I am the one who came about or brought these sutras. He said, I only compiled them. Because these sutras are part of the Vedas also. So in a very concise method, he just put it 196 lines for a serious yoga student. 4 chapters, Samadhi Pad, Sadhana Pad, Vibhuti Pad, and Kavalya Pad. We talked about these 4 chapters. Samadhi Pad has 51 sutras. Sadhana Pad, that means practice, 55 sutras. Vibhuti Pad, 56 sutras. And Kavalya Pad, the last one, where he talks about the freedom, the liberation, the moksha, the nirvana, 34 sutras. So today we are starting with the very first sutra. And we are going to go slowly, as I said earlier. I would like you to learn how to say the Sanskrit words also. Sanskrit words, when we break them down, which is called a Sandhi Vicheda, only then we can pronounce them properly. Okay. So it starts with atha, yoga, anushasanam. See, there are 3 words here, or 4 words, I should say. Atha. Atha means that right time has come to undertake the practice of yoga. So atha means an auspicious beginning. Atha. Generally, we just say atha means now, but there's a deeper significance to atha over here. So it implies that there has been preparation for an auspicious and fruitful journey. Yoga means union, balance, a harmonious state of mind, where the connection of the individual consciousness can be felt, can be achieved with a supreme consciousness. That's yoga, union. Anu. Anu means that follows, which is accompanied by, along with, accordance with. That is called anu. And shashanam means discipline, bringing into practice and being systematic. So atha yoga anushasanam, then comes the right time to undertake the practice of yoga. We all know yoga is more than a philosophy. Sure, it's a solid ground of a philosophy, but it is experiential science also. So that's why some people call it a philosophy, some people call it a science. Because we need to gain a direct experience of yoga. That's why you must commit yourself to a methodical practice. And before you undertake the practice of yoga, you must fulfill some prerequisites. Only then will you have an auspicious and productive journey. And most important prerequisite is that you must know why you want to practice yoga. So just like when we enter into a certain studies, we want to know why do we want to do it. So the clearer you are about your goals and objectives, less the chances of a failure. This clarity comes from knowing that there is something missing in life. There is something you want to have that you don't have. There's also something you have that you don't want to have. You want to get rid of it, but you don't know how. So the philosophy that shows conclusively that the stream of life is mixed with the sorrows and joys, and that there's a way of removing sorrow and embracing joy, is called Sankhya also. And the basic knowledge of this philosophy is a prerequisite to the practice of yoga. See, Sankhya philosophy and yoga philosophy, they are it's like a peer philosophy, they call it. Like both of them go simultaneously, Sankhya and yoga. So the desire to overcome all known and unknown forms of sorrow is an inherent characteristics we all share. So Sankhya elaborates this understanding. It helps us cultivate a right understanding of body, breath, mind, consciousness, and even the world around us. It helps us to know what to expect and what not to expect. From ourselves also, from the others also. And that's how it prevents us from becoming disappointed with life. So better grasp we have on this philosophy, the more powerful the spiritual motive for undertaking the practice of yoga becomes. That's why it's very important to just reflect upon it. Why do I want to practice yoga? Why do I want to become a yoga abhyasi? And according to another group of yogis, hatha yoga is a prerequisite. So the philosophy part we need to know, and the hatha yoga. And hatha yoga means asanas, breathing exercises, positive attitudes towards our body, and worldly relationships. That is a hatha yoga. The practice of hatha yoga helps us eliminate or at least reduce some of the obstacles, and hatha yoga allows us to undertake the spiritual aspect of yoga practices wholeheartedly. Okay, because these sutras are about Raj Yoga. That means for the mind. Body and mind all of us have. So in order to work on the mind, we better have a healthy body. Otherwise, this body becomes the obstacle. That's why, according to certain people, Hatha Yoga is also very essential. And then the term Anushasanam, that is a very emphatic statement. That means you must practice. There is no room for just philosophical debates or other forms or intellectual gibberish in yoga. It's about practice. So Anushasanam indicates that if you are not committed to practice, don't waste your time reading books or just watching YouTube channels on yoga. This is you do it, you practice it. So in order to practice yoga, you must put yourself under the guidance of a competent teacher. Teacher is needed. Guru is needed. Follow the teacher's instructions precisely and do not fool around with the practices. That's what it means, Anushasanam. The instructions must flow from a genuine tradition. You must remain with the teacher who's fully connected to the tradition. And if you are still working on the preparatory steps, simple pranayam, concentration techniques, it's okay to shop around. Go from teacher to teacher, it's okay. Learning about the body, it's okay to shop around. But if you wish to discover the inner dimensions of yoga, everlasting joy and happiness, you must study under the guidance of an experienced teacher. Teacher can only give you what teacher has. You got to learn how to follow the instructions precisely. So Anushasanam is a statement of your commitment to do that. Okay? So atha, yoga, Anushasanam. In the next verse, he says, yogashchittavrittinirodhah. If somebody asks you what yoga is, this is what yoga is. Complete mastery over the modifications of the mind is called yoga. Yogashchittavrittinirodhah. Because we are not talking about the Hatha Yoga over here, we are talking about the Raj Yoga, which deals with the mind, which deals with the antakaran. So that's why yogashchittavrittinirodhah. So in a single monumental sutra, Patanjali has created a thread of understanding that connects all practices of yoga. It really illumines the core of spiritual life. So let's look at all these words separately also. Yoga, again, union, harmonious state of mind, or connecting the individual consciousness with the supreme consciousness. Chitta. What is a chitta? Chitta is the repository of thoughts and feelings. The inner instrument, the deeper layers of the mind is called Chitta. The instrument that consciousness uses to explore its own manifestation. That is a Chitta. Not just the outer mind, the deeper mind. You can call it a basement of the mind. That's a Chitta. Vritti. Vritti is modification, thought constructs. That which rotates like a wheel, movement. Vritti. And vritti, see, it's almost like if the mind is a rubber sheath and you throw a ball on it, and there's a warping effect on the sheet, that is vritti. And what is that ball? Ball is pratyay. We'll talk about that also later. But vritti is the warping effect. Vritti word comes from the dhatu vrit, which means to whirl. That's why I said it's a warping effect. Vritti is the starting point of the thought. And we got to understand as a yoga students, very important thing about vritti, that we can handle it. We can regulate it. We can stop it. We can make it positive or we can make it negative. No matter what circumstance, no matter what objects are around us, what ambience we are in, finally our vrittis are ours. Okay, so that's why this beautiful verse over here, yogashchittavrittinirodhah, we should not be afraid of these vrittis. These are our vrittis. We own them. We can nirodh them. And what does nirodh means? Nirodh is a compound word, ni plus rodh. Ni means completely, in every respect, from every direction. That's a ni. And rodh means not allowing to roam aimlessly. That is a rodh. Confining it, restraining it, disciplining it. So attaining mastery over the modifications of Chitta is the core of yoga practice. Most of us are not familiar with the word Chitta, let alone the Vrttis. That's why Rishi Patanjali starts out this great scripture, defining it for us. We will see that if we can do this restraining of our Vrttis, what will we get? And how many kinds of Vrttis we have. And he'll tell us how to control them also. So again, very systematically, very methodically, he's going through this subject over here, which is very important. So according to the sages, the mind stands between the unmanifest, transcendental reality and the manifest world. See, manifest world means the world which we live in. Unmanifest is which we don't, which is not perceptible by our senses. Mind just becomes in between, like a sheath. So it is that which stands with the body and the soul also, you can say. Because we always say soul is the essence of us. But how come we are not familiar with it? It's only a concept for us. If we say that it's more real than the manifested world, how come we don't know who we are? What is blocking it? The Vrttis or the mind. Mind is like a customs officer. You know, when we go to India, there are those custom officers sitting over there checking us. Or in any country we go to, mind is like that. If we import something, or some people are exporting something, they have to pass through it. And that's what happens with the mind. If that custom officer is corrupt, we know what will happen. If the mind is corrupted, we all know what will happen. So the goal of yoga is to train the mind, discipline it, remove its corrupting tendencies. Meditation and contemplation are powerful tools for training and disciplining the mind. We all know meditation makes our mind one-pointed as well as vigilant. By practicing meditation, we train the mind to stay alert. Some of the trained Hatha yoga teachers, while they are teaching us how to take care of the body, they tell us where to keep the mind, because they are working, they are helping us how to work on the mind also, alongside taking care of the body. Contemplation gives the mind an opportunity to understand that its job is simply to facilitate the exchange between the internal and external. Internal world and external world. It's just a bridge between these two. Through the practice of contemplation, we come to know that the role of the mind is simply to watch and register whatever passes between these two realms. Nothing more. So we got to learn how to calm our Vrttis. Our mind's roving, revolving tendency we need to work on. And gaining mastery over the mind entails overcoming the mind's tendency to roam aimlessly from one object to another. We are the master of our mind. But when we let our mind roam wherever it wants to roam, that means we have become the slave to our mind. A yogi understands that, no, this mind is for me. I better take control of it. A disturbed, distracted mind is not fit to practice yoga. Remember that. We need a healthy body, definitely, but more so the mind. Because body, we know as we get old, the body will become weak. That is the nature of this physical body. But the mind, on the other hand, whether the body is sick and old, if the mind is still healthy and in our control, then we can enjoy this journey and reach to the destination. As a practical matter, however, body, mind, and consciousness are intermingled. We never experience one in isolation from the other two. We are mainly occupied by the concerns of the body because we are more sensitive to it than to the mind. All our life we have catered towards body. Body is gross. We can see it, we can feel it, we can touch it. So that's why we are more obsessed about the body. So practicing the core of yoga, attaining mastery over the modifications of the mind becomes secondary to dealing with the needs and demands of the body. I'm talking about before you take this commitment seriously, more attention to the body than the mind. But afterwards, when you become serious students, then it reverses. Then you're always aware of what my mind is doing. So that's why the practice that helps us become healthy and strong at the physical level has come to be called yoga also. Because it helps us, when the body is healthy, it helps us to minimize the obstacles which can come on the path of mastering the mind. So that's why asana, breathing, which is a pranayama, relaxation techniques, concentration techniques, or even a proper nutrition are all part of yoga. But a sincere student must remember that ultimately yoga means union. That is the definition of yoga, union. The ultimate union is between the individual and the supreme. And the mind is the essential tool for this union. Okay, so mind, not just an outer mind, but the complete mind, which is a chitta also. So now look at this verse, yogashchittavrittinirodhah. If somebody asks you what is the definition of yoga, you should memorize it. It's very simple. I told you this time around, we are going to memorize some of these sutras, especially the simpler sutras. So this is, the first one is very simple, atha yoganushasanam. Very easy to remember. This week, try to memorize whatever we are studying today. So yogashchittavrittinirodhah. I'm sure some of you have already memorized it. And if we have gotten the control of our chitta, chitta vrittis, what will we gain? See, just like in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna keeps telling us, if you do this, this will happen. And if you don't do it, what is the outcome? Rishi Patanjali is doing the same thing. So if we can do the nirodha of our chitta vrittis, in verse number 3, he says, tada drashtuh svaroope avasthanam. Then the seer becomes established in its true nature. Seer. How would we see ourselves if our inner vision were clear and unobstructed? This sutra explains that we would see ourselves as we are. And as we are, our Atma, the soul, is nothing but Paramatma. So, tada means then. That means only after. That means only after you have learned how to control your Vrttis. Only after tada. Not before that. Drashtuh. Drashtuh is a possessive case of drishtuh, which means a seer, perceiver, pure witness, as opposed to the doer. This is the drashtuh, pure consciousness, pure intelligence, divine being. Or you can call it Atma, the soul, Purush. These are different terms, different ways we can define this. Drashtuh. Or you can call it a transcendental reality. Svaroope. That is a locative form of Svaroope. Swa plus Roop. Swa means once on. Swa. Roop is the form. So Swa Roop. Avasthanam. Avasthanam means establishment or resting ground. So then the seer becomes established in its true nature. In other words, we know ourselves in simple language. We always want to know who we are, because that is a very deep question in all of us if we pay attention to it. We want to know. That's why it's a common saying, know thyself. Oh man, know thyself. We want to know. And this is the way to know. Because the Vrttis in our Chitta, they keep on fluctuating and they don't let us see who we are. If we learn how to control them, you are not trying to bury them down, you are trying to control them. Okay? You are not suppressing them. Nirodha does not mean suppress. So it is only when the mind is no longer in turmoil that the divine being within us can rest peacefully in its natural abode. Philosophically, it is true that the soul is pure and divine. Okay? Atma has only the Shuddha, Buddha, never subject to change. So never without peace. Intrinsic nature of Atma is only bliss. But as a practical matter, when the soul is accompanied by a disturbed mind, it loses its self-awareness. And once embodied, it must use the mind as a tool to experience its own inherent attributes. So mind we need in order to attain this state. Mind is essential. Manaiv manushyanam karnam bandhanoksha. So that's why this Rishi Patanjali, he has given us these beautiful sutras to understand the mind and how to take care of the mind, how to clean this mind, how to control this mind. If this tool is contaminated, I'm talking about the mind, then the soul has no choice to experience its own nature. Helpless, It experiences only what the mind presents to it. It's almost like if there's a dirt on my glasses, I won't be able to see clearly. Or if my glasses are red or blue, I'll see only red and blue outside. So we are seeing through the glass of mind. And it's important to clean this mind. So this pure and divine, ever perfect soul finds itself in bondage and craves liberation. So sensing this, that this is our goal, we commit ourselves to a variety of spiritual practices. Because as human beings, we have come to that evolutionary ladder where this voice comes to us. Our soul is crying for it. That's why we visit shrines, we read scriptures, we perform rituals, we serve God in temples and churches, we pray, we recite mantras, we practice meditation. So many different ways we are trying to understand who we are. But in this verse, Rishi Patanjali uses the word tada. Tada. He is referring to the previous sutra, sutra number 2. So that means very emphatically, he is maintaining that soul can be established in its true nature only after the mind has become still. Otherwise, we can go to Char Dham or we can just give away whatever we have. We can get rid of the clothes we are wearing. We can cover ourselves with ashes. We can just go into the cave. But if our mind is not calm and pure, we won't see ourselves. That's why he said tada. By implication, it also tells us that a confused mind is not fit to follow any spiritual path. In order to do any practice successfully, you need a disciplined, focused mind. Singing prayers, repeating mantras, reciting scriptures, they have a value. They definitely have a value, but a little value. If mind is scattered, it doesn't help much. Sometimes doing all that can make us even more arrogant. I know more mantras than you do. Or I have visited more temples. Or people can even say, I have a better guru than you do, or I have a bigger form of Lord Krishna than you have. Or I'm giving more donation. If mind is not clean, none of this will help. So all the different forms of spiritual practices have only one goal: to purify the mind by making it one-pointed. Remember that. The divine within us is ever enlightened, and it is the inherent light of the divine that illuminates our inner and outer worlds. And once our mind is purified, the light of the divine illuminates our whole life from within. Within. Spiritual practices do not brighten the divine. It's not that because of our practices we are bringing the light to the divinity. Spiritual practices simply cleanse our own mind, so that the light of the divine from within can pass through the mental field through and without obstruction. Remember that. And we are not bringing the divine in. Divine is already in. There's no place where divine is not. Our dirty mind is not letting us see it or experience it. And once the mind is crystal clear, we begin to perceive the object of the world the way they are. Because our perception is no longer distorted. We come to see that material objects are neither good nor bad, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but neutral. This is what Lord Krishna talked about. He said, udasin, neutral. It is our attitude towards them that makes them appear either positive or negative. Once this realization dawns, the mind finds no reason to be agitated. The charms and the temptations of the world no longer affect it. King Janak was in the palace. Lord Ram, one day he was going to be coronated as a king of that Ayodhya. But the next morning, before sunrise, he was sent to the jungles for 14 years. No difference. Even while it is active in the world, the mind remains still. This is the effect of a yoga practice. It's not that we sit in the cave. We can be in the middle of this beautiful world doing our duties, but mind should be still. Mind should be clean. So in yoga, that stillness is known as a samadhi also, a state in which the mind is free from all disturbances. Sure, there's a state of samadhi where we lose consciousness of our body. We are immersed completely, but there's a state of samadhi where we can walking and talking and still stay in samadhi. This state should be perfectly clear, crystal to us. At least while we are practicing, we should know that that's where we are going. In this state, truth is known in its fullness. That is called enlightenment or self-realization. Okay, so you can see that how this beautiful scripture, which has only 196 lines, starts out that, hey, take this discipline seriously. Seriously. This should be the most important thing for us if we want to become, I don't like to use the word yogis because that's a very high level of achievement, but still we are on the path. So we can call ourselves yoga vyasis. We are the students of yoga. So if we call ourselves yoga vyasis, this should be clear to us. Everything else I can let go. But my discipline, the practice which I have started doing, I will not let it go, no matter what happens. Sure, be practical about it. You can start the practice just half an hour of yoga practice, but do not reduce half an hour to 25 minutes if somebody came to your house, or if something else has happened. If you're sticking to half an hour of practice, make sure you do half an hour. And rest of the day also watch your mind. What is happening to your mind? But sitting down, practice also, he's going to tell us to do, which is called meditation. Or you are starting with the concentration pose. You cannot meditate, but dharana is before that. Do that at least. So 3 verses we covered today. The first one was atha yoganushasanam. So try to say that loudly also, so that you know how tongue twisting the Sanskrit is. It's a beautiful language. It's a mother of all the languages. All our scriptures are written in Sanskrit. So it's good to know some of it. And that's why I go through word by word so that you know the meaning of each word. So atha yoganushasanam, you have started the practice of yoga. Seriously, diligently. And then yogashchittavrittinirodhah, that is the definition of what yoga is. See, yoga word we use for the path also, for the destination also. Because when somebody says, I'm practicing yoga, and then ultimately, goal is also yoga. But this is the definition of yoga. Yogashchittavrittinirodhah. And then when we can attain this control of our Vrttis, what happens? Beautiful verse, tada, drashtuh, svaroope, avasthanam. So try to memorize these 3 verses this week at least. Let's see how you do it. Let's stop it here, and we will start with the verse number 4, but after reading this Shanti mantra, we can have some discussion. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.